We are back with the SEC playoffs for phase number 1. We're over in North America now, though. Baskin and the boys up against Bloogy and the Woogys. A 1 versus 2 seed matchup in this one, and a matchup where in the regular season, Bloogy and the Woogys were able to 2-0 Baskin and the boys. Here's what we've got for you to round out the SEC playoffs. Now, Lermy, looking at this matchup, though, is this as close as maybe a 1 versus 2 seed seems? We looked over in Europe, Belt Slap, we're kind of the heavy favorites in that one. And looking at the track that some of these teams had going into this one, do you think this one is a closer matchup than maybe what we saw over in Europe?
It might just be. I mean, Bloogy did fall down in that first set up against Hype Unit 2-0, but they actually did turn that one around in the losers bracket when they actually 2-0'd Hype Unit. So I think if Bloogy and the Woogys play exactly like they did yesterday, we might be seeing them really bring it to Baskin and the boys.
Yeah, I suppose it depends. Do you get round 1 Bloogy and the Woogys that got 2-0'd, or do you get losers round 2 that return the favor? This Baskin and the boys team, they look very difficult to beat right now. I mean, there's obviously this core around Baskin in the mid lane, but it seems so much more than that. I mean, Haddix, Mast, Meerkat, Geno, they've all been playing very well, and it's a tough roster, I think, to break down.
Well, when you're talking about the roster, I think you really have to mention their namesake, Baskin. Yesterday we saw him pop off on that Scylla pick and really dismantle Hype Unit with that one. So I think they have to really be concerned about that, especially going into this matchup against Bloogy and the Woogys. But I want to take a look at their opponent's mid laner as well, ErupTCrimson. We just saw Nuwa get played by Zeros over in EU, but Crimson yesterday pulled out this Nuwa in 2 games and really impressed me with his gameplay. I mean, when you think of Nuwa, you don't think of her as a meta pick. She really hasn't been on the board for a long time, but when you see damage numbers like his pop up in the game, I mean, you gotta be concerned.
Yeah, something to look at absolutely as we move in to picks and bans here for game number 1. Baskin and the boys, maybe not difficult to break down that roster as far as highlighting, but difficult to break down in game. But Bloogy and the Woogys were able to do it, remember, in Phase 1 here of the SEC. We've talked a little bit about the mid laners. Remember, in our previous set, we saw heavy priority into the jungle. That's because Johnny is kind of the big guy there that tends to hyper carry some of the late games for Belt Slap. Do you think, with mid laners being so important between these two teams, maybe there's a heavier priority as far as picks and bans go with mid lane gods?
I think I like the idea from Bloogy to focus out some of those more meta picks and banning away those from Baskin, but I think I like Baskin's idea too, because they're banning away that Pele from Andy, and Andy sure had a stand-off performance on that one, so I'm glad they're taking that away. At the same time, you've got to be worried that even if you're taking out that kind of mid-tier jungle pick, Andy is known to pop off on some of the more high-tier ones as well, and I mean, I've been singing the praises of Thor and Hoonbots all day, but I think that they're still very strong picks in this meta. But check out what's going on here. They are actually going to be taking out this Sobek too, and we saw over in Europe, Trix Tank piloted that one pretty well, so not surprised to see that guy taken away.
No, and I'm so curious because we've seen Thor obviously prioritized in our previous set. I feel like Hoonbats is maybe kind of gone by the wayside here in these picks and bans. Maybe we'll start to come out here. Baskin and the boys lock in that Thor first pick overall. Let's give our jungle just a little bit more as far as impacting that early game. The Anvil of Dawn will certainly be able to push some early game advantages. Now, Odin, a god that super powerful early in the SEC, saw some changes, still hovering right around that 36% win rate, seem about a third of the time. Do you like Bloogy and the Woogys, though, going for him first overall?
They're also going to be picking up this tier, and we saw what Julio was able to do on it just last game, so I'd imagine it's going to be just that simple for the solo lane of Bloogy as well. So I really like that pickup, but in response, they've got the King Arthur, and of course last match maybe not really the matchup to look at to really prove how even this can be between those two, but depending on the situation, I think that's going to be a pretty relatively even solo lane matchup. We might not see any true advantage come out until we get to that mid to late game when those guys are making the rotations towards the Gold Fury and other objectives.
Now, I love Ganesha just as a god that I enjoy to play in the game, and obviously some of the Smite players here in the SEC and SPL enjoy Ganesha as well. 100% win rate on the Elephant. Now, Nuwa also 100% win rate, so something's got to give here. What do you like in a Ganesh pick over there for support?
I think it does a really good job of locking down some of this Odin and Tyr's potential. One thing that Tyr has that makes him able to deal with a lot of CC really easily is that passive. He only takes 1 second of typical CCs, but Ganesh has that reapplying silence. So if he's able to hold down that Tyr in the silence, he's not going to be able to bully the backline like he typically does. That also applies to that Odin, because if he's able to throw out the Ohm onto the charging spear, it's going to get canceled out right away, and that cooldown is then gone. So being able to get rid of that hard CC is super important.
Right, so much aggressive potential and then also defensive potential with Ganesh, depending on what the situation requires. We wondered where Hunbats would maybe fall here, and it's picks and bans for Baskin and the boys, or bans rather for Baskin and the boys. Their 5th and final ban will go to that Hunbats. Now Jing locked in for Bloogy and the Woogys. Hunter falling a little bit further down now in priority, where Jing usually, I guess, hovers, top middle of the pack, so maybe not that outstanding there. Raijin for Baskin and the boys. Let's put Baskin on something that he can do some great damage with as the game goes on.
This is a classic Meerkat pickup as well. This Xbalanque has been kind of his bread and butter throughout the whole split, and there it is locked in, so no surprises there. But the only thing we've got left for Bloogy and Woogys is their jungle pit, and with Hunbats, Serket, Pele taken away, it might be looking a little bit more towards something unconventional, and I'm here for that 1,000%.
Well, Ravana is certainly unconventional. 9% pick rate, unconventional. That rounds out the draft here for Bloogy and the Woogys. That final edition of the Ravana, does it make some sense to you?
Yeah, I do think it's pretty good, especially to deal with some of the burst of CC coming out of Baskin and the boys. If he's able to get that overhead kick off, he's going to immune some of that CC and hopefully give himself a chance to run away, which is super important because Baskin and the boys have a ton of lockdown potential, especially if Ganesh drops those pillars right on top of it. So if I were to pick one draft, it's got to be Baskin and the boys, but at the same time, I think Bloogy and the Woogys could do it.
Well, Baskin and the boys have that 1-game advantage, so right into Game 2, we'll go down to J-Mac and Aggro.
Thank you, Dave and Lermy. I mean, looking at these two compositions, I mean, this just feels like a repeat of yesterday's comp for Bloogy and the Woogys aggro. And at first, I was like, I don't see this comp working out, but they've made me believers with this Odin, with this new Wasp specifically.
Yeah, but at the same time, J-Mac, I feel like the Pele was a big part of why that composition really worked well. It's a much better fighter early on. I mean, Ravana can scrap early, don't get me wrong, but it's a little bit more bursty, a little bit less sustained damage. And I think that Bloogy and the Woogys have plenty of burst damage here, but they don't have a whole lot of sustained damage. And I think that you want to keep going in that direction with the Ravana, or do you want the more sustained, we can keep a fight going a little bit longer DPS coming out of the Pele? I think the Pele was relevant in a lot of those games, and he got off to great starts. And the difference between Bloogy and the Woogys when andinster is feeling it, getting off to a good start, getting first bloods, rotating around the map, and when Andy is even, not necessarily behind, but even, I think it's pretty night and day. This is a team that needs momentum, and I think the Ravana is less conducive to getting it than the Pele.
And we saw a lot of respect in those picks and bans. We saw the Pele taken away. To the flip side, we saw Baskin Scylla taken away. With all respect, he popped off yesterday on that god, sent Hype Unit down into the loser's bracket. I mean, when I'm looking at these two compositions, I really do feel that Pele was the big trendsetter for Bloogy and the Woogys. And I mean, when you saw in the picks and the bans phase into it, Ravana does not have a single win so far the split with it. That's my most concerning bit here is you go to this Ravana, but it just hasn't shown any success.
I mean, it's also the fact that Baskin and the boys not only pick and ban pretty well in terms of banning away that Pele, but also they pick something in Ganesh that is far stronger into the Odin. So much of what Odin brings in lane is the ability to just walk at you, start channeling the 3, and now he's slowing you, dealing damage, he's going to stun you. It forces your hand into really awkward positions. Ganesh is going to interrupt that, and I think that that's a big change from previous iterations of Odin to this current iteration of Odin, is that it's really important to find interrupts in terms of CC for that 3. You can't let him channel it forever. It's just going to cause you too many problems. So now you've got two forms of interrupt with Ganesh. You've got the Ohm and the remove obstacles, stun, knock up. Both of those are going to take care of Odin's biggest pressure in lane, which is his ability to stun you.
I think this Ganesha is the one kind of turning point here for Baskin and the boys that really stands out in the draft. Very aggressive play towards this purple buff as Gamma and Blugin are trying to steal this one away. They won't be successful. Andy on rotation as well, but nothing to be gained from it. Purple buff will go the way of Baskin and the boys. They still get their buff. And he heads back to base as he's not able to get anything off of that rotation. Now rotation here from Mask on the Thor, trying to see if maybe he can take away a blue buff from Aquarius.
It's really tough to invade a tier, though. Tier has some of the best secure in the game because you can push it out of the buff camp range, and it'll make it so that it's technically leashed, but the Fearless is still doing damage to it during that time. And so it's really, really hard to invade him properly. I think Mask makes the right call. Tries to go and get the invade. Haddix lets him know that Aqua has cleared the wave and that he's going to be there with priority. And Mask just doesn't waste his time and make sure to keep up his farm up until this point. I mean, he's up a pretty decent amount of XP per minute over Andy right now. That seems to be about a camp ahead of where andinster is in the jungle currently.
Yesterday, not just the Pele, but I really feel like Crimson had a big proponent in why the Bloogy and the Woogys were able to snowball so early. We saw not just Andy's rotations on the Pele, but the constant rotations out of Crimson on this new Wa. And I feel that if they can get some of that going, they can help with that early game. But I'm still not sure on this Ravana pick. I mean, I think this is where I'm going to keep coming back to is what is this Ravana going to offer for them, even once this mid and late game comes through.
And if I remember correctly, we saw Andy play this Ravana in round 1 where they lost up against Hype Unit, and it did not look particularly good. So I agree that a magnifying glass should be on this Ravana pick. But I'm enjoying seeing all the Nuwa recently. I think that after her buff to the clay minions, making them just a little bit faster, it's just the type of buff that makes players revisit a character like Nuwa, give her a shot, haven't played her in a little bit. And she brings quite a bit. I think that her itemization right now isn't too bad. It's a little bit awkward early, but come late game, she is swinging for a ton of damage still. I talked about it last time we saw the Nuwa. The difference between a decent Nuwa player who's going to press forward and stack damage and a great Nuwa player who's going to be using their passive properly and utilizing the minion stun and getting it for prot shred and hitting it on tanks. I think of Nuwa as a tank shredder more than anything else. As soon as Geno goes in with that dash, if that's on the Andy or Gamma, you got to be looking for Crim.
Well, they're looking for Meerkat right now, stuck inside the cage, and the airstrike will be enough to finish the job. Blugin gets first blood for his team, and just left out to dry there is Meerkat. No one there to save his life, and when you're up against an Odin, no Phantom, you just get caught out and die.
Costs them a bunch of ultimates, so Crimson uses his just to secure the assist as well. So 3 ultimates in exchange for Meerkat, but it is first blood. It gives Blugin pressure over here on this side of the map. And even though when Geno's there, it takes away a lot of the effectiveness from this Odin. When it's ganking Xbalanque, you're fine.
Well, one good thing onto it is he does hold his purification beats throughout that entire engagement, Mask in the Sky. Looking like he may have wanted to go over to that right-hand side, but Aqua makes it under the tower after an assault from Haddix on this King Arthur.
What do you expect out of Arthur at this point in the game? I mean, Tier will get to the point where he's healing enough to where that poke will be less relevant. But with the build that Aqua is going for, he's going for the movement speed tier. That's what we've seen quite a bit of. The solo troll build, as I've been corrected. And so it's really not about your laning phase at all with this build. It's about being able to rotate into team fights and just put incredible pressure onto everybody because you can close any gap with your double dashes and your Lawbringer over walls. It's not going to really help you during the laning phase. And so Haddix has been able to bully Aquarius up until this point. And I expect as soon as he gets those boots, it's going to be even harder for Aquarius to really stand and fight.
I mean, in reality, who's ever catching a tier with not just double dash, but that much movement speed built up? I mean, you have to hard focus all mobility and all forms of CC to slow them down. Gamma getting very aggressive on this left-hand side yet again. Both cages thrown out. The Geno's used as a defensive measure. Baskin on rotation. They're on full retreat here for Bloogy and the Woogys. Not getting any relics off of that one. Just a couple of ults burnt.
But that's huge to just make sure that Meerkat is not falling super far behind in this lane. You really can't afford to let him get caged over and over again and just die, especially if Haddix is going to be getting himself this much pressure alone on the right-hand side. And he doesn't really want to come and gank this King Arthur. He can't kill him. This is a much better use of his time.
Very aggressive dash in by Baskin, and Masked with the double tap just leaves Baskin rolling around on the barrel saying, okay, I guess that wasn't even necessary then, as they put themselves on the board. But one question I have to you, Ryan, is we're looking at the two builds of the Hunters. Almost always we've been seeing it back to the Devo gloves. You know, these Dev gauntlets have been so prevalent again. Why are we seeing it go into the Transcendence here for Meerkat?
A huge part of why Xbalanque is so effective late game is the fact that branching bolas is just adding flat damage to your auto attacks. That's a huge part of why he's really strong. And you can go Devourer's Gauntlets on Xbalanque, but it makes your mana sustain pretty difficult to balance. Your abilities cost a lot of mana come late game, but Transcendence usually lets you gloss over that fact pretty effectively. By building Transcendence, it lets Meerkat just keep branching bolas on 24/7. He never has to worry about his mana consumption, which is a really, really big deal whenever you want to be costing yourself 15 mana on auto attack come late game, especially when you want to be prioritizing ranking up those branching bolas. I believe Meerkat likes to level the 1 that most Xbalanque players do at this point. If you don't go Transcendence, even at this point in the game with the good MP5 that Hunter's Blessing has, you'll be going back to base more than you want. You can get an Aussie after your boots and Transcendence are completed, still find yourself some lifesteal. It won't be as strong, but it makes your overall power curve pretty good and lets you keep your 1 on.
Well, Haddix playing very aggressive up by the back Harpy camp on Bloogy and the Woogys side of the jungle and dunking down in his mask. Baskin will clean up the kill with the extra damage out of the Raijin. And Haddix, he's not done yet, still going for Crimson. Aqua's here to deter him for just a little bit. It's going to throw him up against the wall. With Geno here, it won't be too much more aggression out of this tier. Aqua forced to go back to his tower, but Haddix on a full chase.
Just love the way that B&B have really grouped up so far. It's really following Baskin's lead. Baskin is being very aggressive with his level lead that he has. And Baskin and the boys, their kills have been very, very aggressive on Bloogy and the Woogys side of the map, and this is what you want to do against Nuwa. She's going to scale really, really hard, and you can't stop that ult damage later on, so you have to interact with her earlier than that.
Blink in, it's going to be a cage up onto the Taiko drums goes Baskin, putting so much damage into Gamma. Andy chasing down, but he just can't find the damage. He doesn't have the CC for it, but Mask gets caught out by that root, by the clay minions, and that will be a spill on the side of B&B.
Lost the beads there for Mask as well, so you're not feeling super great about his chances next time Baskin and the boys try and get aggressive on the other side of the map. But just a really good initiation by Gamma, blinks in over that wall, doesn't let it go. And Blugin rotating all the way over from duo side was absolutely critical there as well. And this is what you want to do when you've gotten a level lead in a side lane. It is really, you should think of it as this many waves I can miss and still be effective in this game and not fall behind. Because Meerkat got killed early on, you know that Blugin's going to have a bit of a lead over there, so he can afford to miss a wave that Meerkat needs to be there for. Meerkat can't afford to miss any waves, but Blugin can because of his mobility and the fact that he already has that lead. We see it in solo lane as well. That's exactly what you want to do. Get these leads and then use them to transfer some extra golden experience to the other sides of the map.
Andy going to avoid that wall at a mass. Take one hit of the hammer, but not both. And looking at these mid lane builds, we've seen an evolution of mid lane builds throughout this entire season. I think these have changed more than anything else, but hold that as Crimson forced up into the sky. Baskin still holding on to one of those shots from the drums, and with the percussive storm, he'll get a double kill on top of the Thunder Crash. Andy and Crimson both fall. Blugin and Gamma now on rotation. Baskin with a sliver of HP is just trying to find a way out, but Blugin will find it with the auto attack and the airstrike just for good measure. Cage drops down, Matt stuck inside, but I don't think he's too worried about it. It's for a Meerkat here.
Big shutdown for Blugin to get that bounty on Baskin, but Baskin finds another 2 kills just by being really aggressive in conjunction with this Ganesh. And I love the interaction there between the Dharmic Pillars and the Taiko drums. Baskin just keeps pushing andinster onto the wall and keeps making him take that damage coming from Geno in that little moment. Geno's there to contribute, but really it's Baskin who's dashing in and being the aggressor.
A lot of aggressive play on this left side of the map, especially within the jungle. We see another purple buff invaded by Bloogy and the Woogys. I mean, this is where we've been seeing a lot of priority. Some games it's been red buff, but majority of the time we've been seeing a lot of purple buff invades by these teams.
It's just one of the buffs that is easier to put pressure on because you can walk right out of lane in order to contest it. ADCs usually don't have fantastic wave clear that gets them to those buffs early on in the game, so you can group some members around and find those invades pretty easily, and it's impactful. Getting that extra little bit of prot, shred, aura, and the attack speed you notice when you don't have it. So it kind of checks all the boxes on things you want to be invading pretty consistently.
Baskin here has kind of been not necessarily the only shining star of this team. I mean, he is the namesake of the team with Baskin and the boys, but he has been very aggressive on this Raijin. It's kind of been one of the leading proponents for this game from what I've seen. I mean, so far, I mean, Mass is coming and going up, getting some good dunk downs, but it's really been off of the calls of Baskin this time around. Going into the late game, I mean, it's going to just be more damage, more aggression on top of it. I don't see Baskin and the boys slowing down anytime soon.
And as soon as Haddix starts joining these fights, it's only getting worse for Bloogy and the Woogys. He's up 2.5 levels right now on Aqua, and Aqua's build isn't going to get him a whole lot healthier anytime soon. It's a little bit of HP, sure, but it's really there for the movement speed, whereas Haddix is getting a whole lot of power at the same time. He's working towards a runic shield now. That's going to make him be able to dive Crib very, very effectively. Crimson won't be able to do anything.
Mass out of the sky, dunks down onto Gamma. He's going to get the cage and the shield down, but he's stuck inside the Dark Pillars, and Baskin will finish him with the Taiko drums. Another rotation over from this mid lane and started up by Mass. Baskin and the boys have yet to let off the gas pedal.
Andy's really spending time over here. Finally get a blink in onto Meerkat, but Meerkat putting out great damage. Good Aegis as well, and Mask is here to save him.
The Blugin's going to get the airstrike to drop that one, but oh, hey, look, Baskin never left this side of the map. Him and Geno will turn around and immediately get the shutdown bounty on Blugin.
Yeah, it just feels like, I mean, Andy stood in the jungle there for a little bit longer than I would have liked, I would say. I mean, he's staring at Meerkat for a good 10 seconds before anyone decides to make a move, and the one who makes a move is Baskin and the boys. They must have had a ward on him, or Meerkat just kind of sniffed it out that he needed a rotation over. As soon as that happens, Andy backs up and then tries to go back in right away, thinking that Baskin and the boys wouldn't still be there. And I mean that literally. Baskin and Geno and Mask still all over on that left-hand side of the map. Yes, you kill Meerkat, but Blugin is your win condition right now if you're Bloogy and the Woogys. I think Andy correctly identifies that. He's trying to get Blugin even further ahead. He was up about 1,000 gold on Meerkat before that skirmish on the left-hand side. But by sitting there for that long, all you're doing is inviting a whole lot of members of Baskin and the boys to come over and shut down the guy you can't really afford to lose.
Starting up this Gold Fury, Gamma and Blugin are in the area, but Gamma's the only one immediately here trying to get it with the spear, but way too early on the throw for it. And I think another problem with Andy sitting over there so long is he's not just it took forever for them to get the kill, he died in the process alongside it, but he is the second lowest farmed player in the entire game, only above his own support, Gamma, who's been struggling to find farm of his own this whole time.
He's down 1,300 gold to Mask alone. I mean, it's a 4K lead right now for B&B, and it's really sprinkled all across the map. Haddix is huge in comparison to Aqua. I mean, he's up nearly 2K.
Gamma gonna drop the cage down. Meerkat stuck inside. Not too worried about it for now, but he doesn't have that Aegis from the previous fight, so a 3-man rotation will be enough to get Meerkat dropped down, as well as the tier 1 tower. And hey, they finally were able to make a clean kill onto him this time around. Baskin getting aggressive onto Crimson with that Taiko drums. Will not have the damage or the shots to find, but Mask isn't done yet. He doesn't have vision on Crimson, so has to disengage immediately.
I mean, it feels like, yes, Meerkat's dying a lot, but everyone else on Baskin and the boys is doing so well that I don't know how much that really matters for their overall win condition here this game. I mean, he's going to get farm eventually because Baskin and the boys are going to start grouping up and taking Fire Giants and taking Towers and Gold Furies. Blugin's ahead now at this point, but if Baskin's going to be jumping in and ulting Crimson all the time, if Andy's spending a little bit more time there, if Gamma's spending a little bit more time there, then I think that that's an easier way to get back into this game for Bloogy and the Woogys. I think Andy and Gamma have done their job on the left-hand side. Meerkat has been neutralized in comparison to what Blugin's going to be able to do. Now it's time to start putting your pressure elsewhere on the map.
The problem I see with trying to camp the Xbalanque for so long is, it's already been mentioned, he gets a ton of free power with his branching bullets, but not just with that, with his passive. So the more that you force Meerkat to fight, the more player damage you put on his name, and so he just gets even more power going through. Now, he's not quite up there on the charts yet, still about a little over 5,000 damage, but over time, that's just going to slowly build up and give him even more of that free power.
And it's not like you are setting behind a character like Uller or something like that that wants to be super aggressive at this point in the game. Meerkat is fine sitting in lane. It doesn't matter how little farm he has. His job when teamfights start is to just press 4.
Link in the back from Aqua, as well as the Mystic Rush out of Andy. The Dharmic Pillars drop down, but a great wall out of Mask is going to keep them all stuck onto it. Gamma gets dunked down on by Mask, and that will likely be the end of the support. He has the cage to get away for the time being. Blugin with the rotation, but Mask finds Gamma off to the right-hand side. Stuck in the middle is Haddix, as he's now on retreat from Crimson. Has a few minions chasing him around. Geno gets stunned out by the clay minion explosion. And that will be the disengage out of Bloogy and the Woogys.
And you see the difference in power level there. I mean, Aqua finds a phenomenal initiation, a 2-man fearless, but it just doesn't do a whole lot of damage. That's partially build, partially farm. And then Haddix comes in, and he keeps 3 to 4 members of Bloogy and the Woogys busy while staying alive, while doing relatively good damage, while Gamma is able to get isolated by Mask because of all the space that Haddix is creating. That was a good fight by Bloogy and the Woogys, and really it's Aqua who they have to thank for it. But you can tell that it's going to take longer for this composition to get to the point where that initiation does enough. You really need Crim to have 6 items and just be one-shotting Haddix and one-shotting everyone with his ultimate at the same time in order to really feel like this composition's really going to work come late game. It just feels like there's a lot of... The duo lane is Odin support, which doesn't scale particularly well. The cage stays relevant-ish, but... still not the best team to cage I've ever seen. Blugin's on Jing, so he's down to fight late, but also early enough that he can be effective off those stuns. But Ravana doesn't scale particularly well late game. Aqua scales pretty well, and Crimson's really a late game carry. It feels like Bloogy and the Woogys are trying to do too many things in my mind with this composition. It's lacking a little bit of focus, if you would.
And not just that, it feels like the areas where they were trying to succeed with their comp, getting that early pressure with the Odin, with the Ravana, it just hasn't worked out, and so now those characters just aren't as effective for them. I mean, 2 levels down onto Andy. When you're 2 levels down to a Thor, you're not doing anything comparatively, and if the EU match that we saw earlier has anything to tell, one Thor wall can end a game immediately, and if they get caught in a late game Dharmic Pillars like they did in that last one, that could immediately turn a team fight in favor of Baskin and the boys and just send Bloogy and the Woogys packing.
Primal Fury down to about half HP, and Haddix again on zone duty, but they have to watch out for Aqua. He is threatening here.
Mass up into the sky. Gamma stuck inside his own cage. The Dark Pillars drop down, and on top of Blugin they go. Aqua now caught in the middle of everyone, but with no protections, just that health. He gets shredded down by this Hunter Mage combo out of Baskin and the boys. Andy now having to fight against Haddix, and he is not winning this fight anytime soon. Haddix chasing him down. He's going to get the Sundering Strike, but it's just not enough. Missing that last shot, but Masked through the wall will find Andy.
Just beautiful play by Haddix. I mean, he's just taking so much attention away from the back line of Baskin and the boys. Meerkat and Baskin don't have to worry about any damage coming their way at all during that fight. Aqua is just nowhere near as relevant in these team fights as this King Arthur is. And a lot of that is because of this Ganesha by Geno. Ganesha is really a nightmare pick for enemy frontliners because they don't have beads. Something like Tyr, you're really relying on your passive and your movement speed to get you out of sticky situations, but your passive doesn't help you against Ohm. That's a constantly applying silence in that cone, so you just are silenced for that duration. Aqua dives without ever casting Lawbringer, and as soon as he's out of the way, the rest of Bloogy the Woogys all have to run, whereas Haddix is taking the full cage duration from Gamma and then walking around and soloing Andy basically all by himself.
I really think this Ganesha is kind of the one turning point of this drive. Now, everything else is beautiful, by the way. You know, masked on a signature Thor, Haddix gets King Arthur of all gods, Meerkat going on comfort, but really this Ganesha is kind of the highlight point of it, being able to shut down not just Aqua, but Gamma as well, making really both of these players irrelevant into this matchup. And Geno coming into this late game, he can sit in the back line if he has to, keep the tanks off, or he can run up into the front line and just help burn down these carries. Tier 1 tower in the short lane will fall. They're looking towards the Tier 2, or maybe even just looking towards Aqua, so he's surrounded by 4 players. And there's that Ohm again, thrown up into the sky, and Haddix will get the final shot. Once again, that tier passive just not able to do anything against this Ganesh.
Doesn't matter against Ohm or remove obstacles, because it doesn't matter where you're starting from in your CC duration, that stun into knockup is going to last the same amount of time. So that's very, very difficult for Tier to deal with. Now this entire right side of the map is open. I think Andy and Gamma are doing the right thing here. You just got to get farm any way you can. You're not contesting this Fire Giant anyways.
No, and that's going to go down real quick with those Dharmic Pillars right on top of it. And Baskin with the ult just to make sure it goes down as quick as possible. Teleport in from Haddix. We'll chase down the rest of the team. We see Andy has to get himself out of there. I mean, right now, Bloogy and the Woogys are just trying to find any smidge of farm they can get on this map. Getting that tier 1 was about all they could do for themselves.
Still so far behind though here, J-Mac. I mean, you've got a big level discrepancy in the jungle still and in support. Aqua's only level 18. I mean, Geno is the same level as andinster and only 1 level behind the enemy solo laner. And Ganesh is the type of character that's going to do a lot of damage even if he's a little bit behind. When he's this close in level, you're going to die to those Dharmic Pillars. I mean, look at the player damage charts. Geno's above both andinster and Gamma so far, both of whom I think have struggled pretty heavily this game. Andy's at least got the Erendite finish now, so maybe his itemization will let him just one-shot a backliner, but someone else has got to go in there and get Aegis's. Maybe Crim just starts off the fight with the Fire Shards, and you hope the backliners just don't feel like taking that much damage and end up Aegising it away.
I really think in this next game, win or lose here, I don't think that this Ravana is going to see the light of day from Andy again. It just has had 0 impact this game. It had a nice couple of moments early on when they were 3- and 4-man rotating to kill Meerkat, but in these team fights, it just doesn't offer nearly as much as Mask on the Store or even really against anything else that Baskin and the Boys have drafted. Last tower on the map will fall very quickly to the might of Baskin and the Boys. They push up towards this left side Phoenix. Full 5-man defense out of it. Mask looking to kind of teeter off to this right side, more towards the mid lane. He does have that semi-global ultimate to get right back into the fight if needed.
And he can 1v1 andinster with ease right now. Andy's just too far behind to really take that fight effectively.
Up into this, down goes the pillars, and down comes Mask right into the back line, but he's going to hammer port right out as the left side bird falls, and an instant retreat out of Baskin and the Boys, or at least a backing up of it, as Haddix is still in the midst of the fray. Up onto the taiko drums goes Baskin, but he's not able to find anything with it. And that'll be a quick retreat off the Phoenix. Great discipline out of Baskin and the Boys.
With Fury coming up, they're probably thinking that they don't want to push their lead too much, but they still have a lot of relics available here, J-Mac, and I think that you can go Primal Fury and then immediately start sieging, or if Bloogy the Woogys do this and step up, you can fight.
Haddix is going to go right into the back, and Lawbringer out of Aqua as he tries to lock down Baskin, but Geno is right there on defense, and Mask is right in the back line on top of Andy. And oh, by the way, Haddix is still holding that W key on this King Arthur. It's going to force Gamma over the wall. Crimson has to go all the way back to the Phoenix. The clay minions will slow him down for a little bit, but not for too long, as all 5 well and healthy with that Fire Giant regen. Pillars in the back are going to hold 2 players in place while that mid lane bird will fall. Gamma is sitting all alone in the back for some reason as he jumps back to the speed, but I don't see him making it out of this one. Stun on the Meerkat, but a quick chase down from the rest of the team will end that one out very quickly. The Ohm makes sure he won't go anywhere, and Haddix still being a bully in this mid lane. Man,
this Odin pick has done nothing. so far this game, and Game has really got to find a way to be effective on a warrior if that's all he wants to play. It's been Wukong and Odin for him, basically all playoffs, and I think you just have to be more adaptable than that. You just cannot afford to have that be your god pool and beat a team like Baskin and the boys, because those are picks that are pretty one-dimensional in what they're going to do to you. And yes, Gamma got cages off that killed Meerkat early. Sweet. That's not good enough. You know, just killing Meerkat is not going to beat Baskin and the boys. You have to be able to rein in Haddix a little bit on that right-hand side. You can't let Baskin get all the free farm that he got. And while, yes, this Ravana is also a problem for Bloogy and the Woogys, it's a pick. And Ravana is just a god that does nothing when your whole team is really, really far behind. And you're kind of your whole front line doesn't really do a whole lot when you're behind. Tier you can ignore, especially when he's not going to do a whole lot of damage. He might be annoying to lock down because of movement speed, but you don't have to respect him at all when you're this far ahead. Ravana I already touched on. Odin's the same way. I just don't think that you can craft your team composition this way against a team like Baskin and the boys. You have to give yourself an out that's more than just Nuwa.
I mean, cages are nice having Odin, but I mean, when you're looking at 1,700 player damage, I mean, that's nothing for a nearly 30-minute game. I think you said it best. Gamma's done nothing this game. A couple of kills on Meerkat, who cares? Meerkat doesn't even care about that. He's 0-3-9, sure, but he's nearly full build. He's back on par with Blugin, who was the only concern of them at the beginning of the game was keep Blugin down, or keep Blugin alive, make sure that he's getting ahead of the Xbalanque. But it doesn't matter now because we're 30 minutes into the game. You're 15,000 gold down, and you have effectively 3 characters who can't do anything to this Baskin and the boys squad.
You're either crafting the team composition to stomp out early game and snowball, in which case I don't think the Nuwa really fits, or you're insulating yourself more for late game, in which case I think the other picks don't really fit.
Oh my god, Masking with a 3-man dunk into the back, so we'll find 2-2 immediately. A hammer onto Crimson's gonna force him into the skies again. Gamma all the way in the back. I'm not sure why he is always so far back here. Aqua is trying to do something, but Geno is keeping him at bay, and Andy forced the Mystic Rush away from the team as he is just unable to do anything to this front line. And look at this Fire Giant buff's keeping them all full HP again. They're not really concerned about what's going through. Left side bird has respawned, but will fall almost immediately to the might of Meerkat, Mast, and Baskin as they would just walk right to it. It's a 5v5. The Titan might be enough to help them in this fight, but it's going to be a rough one as the Dharmic Pillars are dropped down. The Titan is already under siege. Andy's trying to do something in the back. Aqua's doing a good job keeping Baskin off, but Gamma's already out of the fight as Meerkat grabs him with a couple of basic attacks. And he's just so far behind. He doesn't have the health. He doesn't have the procs for this.
Fire minions coming in, though, J-Mac, and I think that's going to be the main problem here. Blugin falls to Meerkat, Aqua up and over the wall, and tries to get back to the fountain, but that just leaves the door open for B&B to win game 1.
And a quick Titan falls immediately after that. 2 quick kills from Meerkat, puts himself on the board at least for the kills, but most importantly, puts Baskin and the boys up 2 in this set. Remember that this was a 1-game advantage for Baskin and the boys, and they're taking advantage of that, putting Bloogy and the Woogys on the back foot immediately.
Yeah, I just think that we touch on it quite a bit. You just have to come up with a different game plan now if you're on Bloogy and the Woogys. The way that you're drafting is a little bit too fractured. You've got to come in with a cohesive game plan against a team like Baskin and the boys, and hopefully they're able to do that for the next one.
Yeah, I just feel like this team composition was all over the place for Bloogy and the Woogys, and they were never able to settle on that singular idea. But Desk, I mean, what is it going to take for next game for Baskin and the boys to come through and really break down that game for us?
I don't know, J-Mac. That's a tough one for the Bloogy and the Woogys to shrug off. It's an early game that looks good, but really only in that long lane, and then elsewhere on the map, Baskin and the boys completely in control. Wormy with me to break down game number 2 here in this best-of-5 finals between Baskin and the boys and Bloogy and the Woogys. We figured, Wormy, we were watching picks and bans. You actually, when we were just discussing the rosters, we were like, you know, you gotta talk about the namesake. Baskin is just good at Smite, and that Raijin was very difficult to keep down here in game 2.
I think a lot of it has to do with some of the lost focus from Bloogy and the Woogys. And there's a lot of touch points on this, but the first one I want to talk about was the fact that they just did not give andinster any presence in the draft.
No.
He got that last pick for the Robin, and it just did not work out. Another thing to touch on here is that they early picked that tier for Aquarius, but Geno is more than happy to play this Ganesha as he has several times before in this tournament, and that is an absolute counter against tier. And even beyond that, Haddix is a master of this King Arthur, and clearly we saw that he is not afraid to walk up to anyone in this game and spin to win on top of their corpse, right? And so even beyond that, I think there's a lot of different points here that Blugin the Woogys really needs to dissect going into game number 3, because this one could be the last one.
Yeah, it absolutely could be, and that's the benefit of coming in with that one-game advantage. I mean, you look at the composition that Baskin and the boys built in that draft phase, and it's aggression. It's in your face. King Arthur, Thor, Masked going to be dunking down on you constantly. Baskin's found some openings to Thunder Crash forward, a favorite of some of the pros in the SPL, and it just worked. I mean, top to bottom, it worked. I mean, they were able to shrug off the early game woes kind of for Meerkat in that long lane, and then delay the game long enough that the Xbalanque ended up being powerful enough anyway. So I think you look at this draft for Baskin and the boys, and you got to be happy with all 5 picks. Is that something you tend to agree with?
Oh, for sure. And there's a reason that Meerkat favors the Xbalanque in the regular season as well as in this tournament. And to be honest, I don't think Meerkat cares if he dies a lot in the early game, because he knows that his boys have his back. And clearly they did that game because Baskin was definitely a big issue there, alongside Mask in the jungle. I mean, there's just so many big names on this roster. It's really hard to pick one to target out, but it can't be Meerkat.
Agreed. I think Meerkat is versatile enough that picks and bans are going to be tough to kind of center around him. We did see some mixed priority, a little bit different. Some jungle presence. The Pele ban first overall for Baskin and the boys was definitely a talking point to kind of counter out maybe a lot of what Bloogy and the Woogys were looking to do. Nike in the jungle, obviously Sino performs on it yesterday in Obey's win in the SPL. I think Nike jungle, even outside of that, has seen play in something I've been hot and cold on. I mean, I kind of meme, like, can't wait to go play Nike jungle, and then that game it gets stomped, and I'm like, not going to play Nike jungle anymore. Where do you kind of land on Nike specifically? Do you think she's good enough that she warrants a ban here, first overall specifically from Bloogy and the Woogys?
Honestly, I don't think she fits into any of the jungler's playstyles. I think for sure it's not really in Mask's realm. He's more in the Rat, the Thor type of area. And in terms of for Bloogy's jungler, I'm not here for it. I don't think that Andy really is on those kind of gods. I like him on those more hyper carry style gods, and that's why they're banning away this Pele, and especially this Thor. And I was gonna say, if they don't ban away this Thor, if I'm Bloogy, I am slap locking Thor. First pick, take that away from Mask, give Andy one of his signature gods of old times, and honestly, with that ban away though, that is gonna leave that Merlin open, so Baskin gonna be, not Baskin, sorry, Crimson gonna be on Crimson, a character that he's pretty good on.
Yeah, and even despite kind of the game getting away from Bloogy and the Woogys in game 2, Crimson was still doing a good job of farming up some damage on a new wall, granted, but some good damage nonetheless. So maybe give yourself a slight edge in that middle lane, help with anything over Baskin, because finding an advantage, especially with the way that Baskin and the boys tend to build their compositions, certainly hard to do. Tier locked in, solo lane pick, and support pick for Baskin and the boys already on the board. Going right back to the Ganesh, I think it's something that worked fantastic in game 2, and I like Baskin and the boys going right on back.
I think they have to pick that Ganesh there because they kind of revealed their hand, right? Tier played first game for Bloogy and the Woogys, and immediately Geno counters that with the Ganesh. If you're going to first pick that tier for Baskin and the boys, you have to take away its direct counter, because they clearly showed how powerful that was in game number 1. So if they leave that available for Bloogy, I mean, they now know the strategy. They would take that away immediately, but instead they're going to be forced to go into that Sobek and Hachiman here for our good friend over in the duo lane, Blugin.
Right. And Baskin and the boys are going to get a run back on the long lane from game number 2. And remember, I mean, it didn't necessarily pan out all that well for them. There was high pressure from andinster that tried to find some ganks, some kills, and did so for Bloogy and the Woogys. But that late game potential, the kind of dive, disengage even, or re-engage, depending on how you want to play on that Ganesh, worked out well enough for Baskin and the boys, so I think smart for them to go back to that long lane. Serket Hunbat's banned out, so talk about jungle priority here against andinster. Only the Ul are arguably not in that jungle god pool. Baskin and the boys know where they want to strike here against Bloogy and the Woogys.
I mean, clearly on both sides, neither jungler has picked their god quite yet, and that's why I'm kind of surprised to see that we're seeing a little bit of ADC priority over top of that. I know Meerkat really likes that Xbalanque, but there are plenty of other gods that offer a lot of safety alongside that. But look at this. We're going to see a Ravana pick it for Baskin and the boys to say, well, you couldn't do it, but I can.
Yeah, do you like that mindset, though? I mean, it found not much in Game 2, and that might even be an overstatement. Granted, the rest of the team was behind. Tough for Robin to really find big impacts in those scenarios. Do you think maybe a better built composition around this Ravana here for Baskin and the boys with, one pick awaiting in the wings?
I think it's a fine composition around the Ravana. It's kind of hard to really know what is a good comp with Ravana because it's kind of just this very flexible pick where it does have pretty good CC, and it's able to nail down some targets using that Mystic Rush, so I think it is pretty strong overall if you get a lead, but like we saw last game, if it falls behind, it's really going to struggle. At the same time, though, I think it's in a pretty good spot here. We've got some decent early pressure. I think the dual lane will do pretty well as long as they're left on their own, but all in all, I mean, this has been outstanding performance for Baskin and the boys, so I think they're going to take this one.
Well, Robin and Nuwa are going to jump ship over to Baskin and the boys. It's Game 3. J-Mac, can Baskin and the boys finish it off here?
Oh, they're going to give it their best shot. And I mean, what a world that we're living in where Nuwa is now becoming a more priority pick than what we'd seen previously. I mean, Raijin and Discordia kind of been the go-tos, but hardly any mage bans in that last phase there, Aggro. And we see Nuwa picked up here by Baskin.
I'm telling you, man, I really think that she's good right now. I mean, she's definitely still a more late-game character. Don't get me wrong. You're not picking her to win early game. But her early game isn't abysmally bad. It's just not going to snowball you out of control in the vast majority of games. But she kills tanks well with her 2-3. She kills squishies well with her ult. What's not to like?
One thing I like is that Gamma has strayed away from these warriors and gone over to a Guardian, this time around on the Sobek, as we see the Jormungandr, a god who's been kind of looked past by a lot of players so far, is finally getting his light back here into the solo lane, and that puts the Sobek in support, and a lot of potential aggression just like that. Quick pluck is going to get the purification beads out of Meerkat, and this is why I really love Sobek in support as opposed to that solo lane.
Just brings a lot of instant pressure to your lane. It's so important to hit level 2 early on. With the Xbalanque, you're not going to clear that first wave particularly well. As clear isn't horrible, but definitely on the lower end among hunters, even with something like Ganesha that actually boosts your clear quite a bit. And as soon as the enemy Sobek hits level 2 and you're sitting at level 1, you don't have Rising Jaguar available, you have to beat that pluck. You really don't have a choice in the matter. So good job by Gamma being aggressive, stepping up, and knowing that he's going to have a big power spike there.
Good job by Aqua to get so much pressure here in the solo lane against the tier. I mean, this is what Jormungandr does. He walks up, he kills your entire wave, and then he just holds that left click on you consistently, making sure that you just can't walk up to him. He has a decent matchup into tier, having the immunity to both forms of that Fearless, but it does make him take a bit more damage. And taking some damage here, Geno and Meerkat getting a little bit handled here by Gamma and Blugin on this Sobek and Hachiman switch up. Not the Jing Wei this time.
A little bit more aggressive, I would say, for the Hachiman. You have more solo kill potential with this character for sure. Jing Wei is really not bad in the solo kill department, but mounted archery just lets you cover so much distance and put so much pressure on the enemy ADC because of the damage and the slow that you're going to provide, that it's pretty hard once you fall behind against the Hachiman to stay safe in that lane. So with this Hachi pick, I wonder if Bloogy and the Woogys are going to continue to try and put pressure onto Meerkat on this Xbalanque. I mean, X-Ball is a pretty free kill for Set as well. I mean, that dash just doesn't do enough to get you away from a Kingslayer and a max distance Sandstorm teleport. That's a lot of distance that Set can cover pretty easily. So if Andy wants to try the exact same thing, just camp duo, get Blugin ahead, they certainly have the picks to do it.
And speaking of Andy, I mean, we saw in the picks and bans so much jungle priority. I think 5 or 6 assassins were banned out in that phase. And no one had gone for their jungler at that point. Do you think that Andy was banking on maybe getting this Ravana again? But then we see Mask pick it up, and that kind of puts Andy really far back in the God pool.
Maybe. I mean, I think after a pretty rough Ravana game last time around, I think it is pretty easy to say, well, if I didn't fall so far behind, I could be a lot more effective that game. I do think that that's relevant for sure, and you could have gone back towards that pick, but I like to set a good amount here, actually, up against what Baskin and the boys have. Yes, that Ulm is still going to cause you problems. Dharmic Pillars is going to cause you problems, but that's true for just about every single assassin in the entire game. Set kills Xbalanque really well. If Baskin doesn't have ult, it's pretty easy for Andy to just pre-beats that minion stun, and then what is Baskin ever supposed to do in that matchup? I think that Set has places to gank here, and it has matchups where he can really shine, but it's a matter of making sure that your lanes are actually gankable and that you aren't losing too much on the places where you aren't, which is exactly what happened in game number 1.
Yeah, I think one of the big problems that we saw is there was already so much pressure in that dual lane for Bloogy and the Woogys that Andy was never able to make effective rotations. He never had a chance to gank because, man, they're already at their tower line this entire time. Why should I even go up to there? I mean, yeah, you're pushed out, but then when they started falling behind, they're still pushed up only in a single lane. Maybe this time around, Mask can make a difference on this god, the Omat of Geno, as they're on retreat from Andy and Gamma, who push in. Andy using that Kingslayer, but not getting anything off of it, not even a relic.
A little bit early for that Kingslayer, I'd say, there from Andy. You've got to get people a little bit more displaced than that. I think waiting for Gamma to go in first and find a pluck onto Geno maybe sets you up a lot more easily. Maybe you don't even need to use Kingslayer. If Geno gets plucked way out of position, it's pretty easy to then body block that, remove obstacles after the fact. You can find yourself in a spot where Kingslayer, maybe you do have to use it, but even if you do, you're guaranteeing yourself a kill. Definitely a bit too trigger happy there with the ult.
I think for me, the one thing that I like to see if you have a set is a lot more lockdown. Speaking of some lockdown there, Crimson getting poked out by Maz, but I'm not looking at an immense amount of lockdown for this set. He's going to kind of depend a lot on his own slows and his own mobility in order to try and keep chase on some of the squishier targets. Now, Nuwa's not going to be a hard one for him to stick to. It's just going to be a matter of finding her inside the fog, but it's going to be a little rough for me. Andy going late game with this, and the Dharmic Pillar is right on top, and Mass will put a quick, swift death to the jungler.
And again, it's Geno who makes a big difference there. That silence and the Dharmic Pillars, good damage right away, puts it in a spot where Andy's going to have to walk through it to escape. Darkness of Nights comes through, which makes the reaction from Andy even a little bit more delayed. And Andy uses beads at the very end when he's dead no matter what. So now Andy is, again, fallen behind a little bit. Good pressure from Baskin and the boys. I think it's pretty clear that shutting down andinster, they're identifying a lot of what I was talking about at the beginning of last game. The difference between this team, when Andy gets a lead and is able to shot call with confidence and get his team around the map, is night and day different to when he has to try and play catch-up. And they're forcing him to play catch-up, no doubt.
I think this is one of the few teams where their jungler is so dependent on having that early to really make a difference. Not just God-wise, but players specifically. I think Andy does need to have that lead. He does need to have that confidence going in where Mask can be like, okay, well, Baskin, you can do your thing, get yourself going ahead, or even Meerkat, get your farm. Then when late game comes through, we'll do something else. But really, that mentality for Blugin and the Woogys isn't quite there. Is trying to play aggressive on the Geno. Mask's going to make a rotation in and put some damage onto Gamma, as andinster has already gone on full retreat from this fight. Looking at the water's going to do some damage, but a good tail whip gets him out of the Ohm. So Gamma will live for the time. Haddix already rotating to the side of the map. Solo in my lane at 7.5 minutes. What is going on?
And he didn't even teleport either. He just hoofed it all the way over here with those Talaria boots. Aqua as well has joined the fray, but Nuwa, a character that I think punishes Jorm very, very well, because can't really miss those root auto attacks against someone that big. Minions are going to land guaranteed every single time, and you're going to get really good prot shred damage, and Aqua has to use that ultimate just to get away. That fight could have got a little bit better for Baskin and the boys. Feel like that could have been an easy kill. Geno was looking for Andy with that same combo that he hit him with last time on the minis on the left side, but he was just a little bit too far to get silenced. So because the silence wasn't going straight to Gamma, Gamma was able to get that ultimate off and get that CC immunity that he really needed.
And that CC immunity coming out of the Lurking in the Waters is what really allowed him to get that tail whip off to get himself out of danger for the remainder. Blugin getting rotated on by Mask and by Geno as well. Onto the mounted archer he goes, and he'll get out for now. It's one of the safety factors of that Hachiman as that horse goes pretty quick across the map. Now Gamma looking to make a rotation. He's going to be spotted out by Geno on the backside. Mask also on rotation with Baskin. But that charge spray will be enough to get Gamma back to the safety of his lane.
Mask was trying to cut that corner with the Mystic Rush and just couldn't find the angle in order to get that kill, but maybe could have just used it right away without having to wait for him to go over the wall. Not sure if that would have been quite enough. He was about 220 HP. Robin, definitely a god that Mask is far more comfortable on than I am. As much as Andy played it as of late, Mask has been playing it basically his whole career. This is a staple pick for him in his career, so got to trust his judgment, and I'm thinking maybe that wasn't going to be enough.
I think this is something that we also needed to see out of Bloogy Woogys was some of that solo lane pressure. Aqua is another one of those big-name stars on this team, and there's a reason why he's such a strong player here, but Blugin, he's just going to get caught out with no mounted archery, gets stuck in the Gold Fury, but a quick turnaround. They'll be able to pick up Mask in the process of it, make it at least a 1-for-1. Now Geno, a little bit of danger here. He's walking forward, very low in health. Andy's trying to find Baskin. He'll get the slow, and with Aqua on rotation, Baskin forced under the tier 2 tower. Geno is still caught out in the middle of them, trying to save that red buff, but it may cost him his life enough for that pluck. Doesn't connect out of Gamma.
Missing that pluck is tough, man, because that's a kill on Geno for sure. Really, really greedy of Geno to go in there and try and steal it, but it looks like he actually may have done it. I think he might have actually gotten that red buff with the way that it's sitting on the ground still right there. But hey, it doesn't get punished for it overall, so it's not too big of a deal, I suppose.
And he'll get his speed buff, but he's sitting a couple levels down right now, just hitting the level 9 versus Mask, who's had that lead for the majority of the game. And really, I don't know. So far, I'm still not seeing the light with this set. I know the potential that it has, but I mean, like I said earlier, the lack of lockdown from Bloogy and the Woogys is really kind of deterring me from this pick.
I mean, there's just not a lot of CC in general for them, but Set does do a really good job of getting into the back line without any sort of help. Usually you don't need to buy Blink either. You just go Aegis. You use that incredible movement speed and the teleport distance out of Sandstorm to get into the back line without use of a relic. So it really doesn't concern me too much. I think the bigger concern is Gamma's going to find Plucks in the late game, and they're just going to get beads, and they're going to kill him, because there's really no other god that's putting pressure on the purification beads here for Baskin and the boys.
Great call out of Bloogy and the Woogys. No vision control on this side of the map from Baskin and the boys, so they just get to pick up a Gold Fury with no contest for it. Quick heads-up play there out of Bloogy and the Woogys to grab that objective.
Something you still have to respect a lot when it comes to Merlin on the map. Anytime that you reset a little bit too much, that was both Baskin and Meerkat back in base at the exact same time. That's 2 out of your 3 damage dealers that are going to be patrolling that Gold Fury side of the map. It's going to open up a pretty big window, and Merlin does not need a big window. He just needs an instant to really burn down those Gold Furies. Krim had plenty of time with his whole team there to get that Gold Fury. They could have killed 2 of them before Baskin and the boys would have showed up.
Blink in, the Prana Onslaught, followed by the 10-hand Shadow Fist. We'll get a nice root on the Gamma, but not much more beyond there. Dark Pillars drop down. Gamma thrown up into the sky, needs one more hit, and will be grabbed by Baskin, using that ultimate along with Andy, who falls into the backline. Crimson now being chased out by Haddix, who goes over the top with the Lawbringer. Purification beads out of the tier will make sure it doesn't get picked up by that arcane pull. That'll be 2 players down on the side of Bloogy and the Woogys.
Another good rotation in from Haddix. This time Aqua's not there to match it, and he's the difference maker in making sure that everyone from Bloogy and the Woogys has to use relics on the way out and really get forced all the way back. But another really, really good engagement by Mask, who's just finding a little bit more openings. And you can see the difference between a Ravan who's has some winning lanes, is able to be the aggressor in a lot of situations and not just running away trying to find farm where they can. This is what that character is supposed to be able to do at these points in the game.
I like the change mentality of trying to sit on this duo lane last time like Andy and Gamma did. They sat here, they kept trying to keep Meerkat down and down, and it didn't work out for them last game, so they recognized this game, all right, let's take our focus away from that duo. Just let these two hunters go at it, because hunters will be hunters come late game, especially if one of them is Xbalanque. They're putting a little bit more focus into the mid and the solo lane side, and he's getting tossed around like a ragdoll by Haddix on this tier. Mask gonna get hit by that tail whip. It's gonna do a little bit of damage, and Aqua poking him out with the venomous spit as well. That'll force Mask back to the back end of the jungle. Baskin's here on zoning duty with these clay soldiers. Gamma has to be careful. He gets rooted in place by Baskin. Geno there with the Dharmic Pillars. Just keep Andy locked down. He has nowhere to go, and Baskin will clean it up. No problem. Haddix throwing Crimson up into the sky and taking him out with the power cleave. Another 2 kills for Baskin and the boys.
No one turns to help Crimson at all because Gamma's preoccupied trying to get the kill onto Baskin. Baskin really plays patiently with that minion stun, plays it really well, and sets himself up. The Dharmic Pillars were pretty good from Geno. Ideally, you want that prot tread before the Fire Shards hits in order to maximize the damage, but still gets a couple of ticks off on multiple people. And you see the power of the Nuwa. She just peels for herself so well, buys herself plenty of time in the sky.
Aqua taking about half of his health in this combo, even though he's immune to those knockups, those pushes and whatnot. He still does take that increased damage because of the passive, and it really comes to fruition with Baskin on this Nuwa. If he can get a root and a clay soldier on top of it, I mean, he's as good as dead.
And the beads were forced. I like the beads pickup by Aqua. I think you basically need them against this composition because it's just too easy for Baskin to set you up and kill you. And Aqua's going to be a key part of Bloogy Woogys if they're able to win this game. He's gotten a ton of farm over there. Haddix has really been rotating consistently, but Aquarius has as well. He's been involved in enough fights with this farm that he has. He's invading blues. He's gotten this first tower. Aqua's looked much better so far this game, but he's going to need to capitalize with all this farm if Bloogy Woogys want to win.
And Merlin will be Merlin as they pick up another objective. Then just a little bit of gap is all that's needed for this god to take just about any objective necessary. That fire stance so great at shredding down anything on the map, whether it's a player or an enemy jungle camp or literally just an objective. Fire giants, pyromancers, gold furies. This god is one of the best in the game at doing it.
And Crim's got himself enough farm at this point. He's not that far behind in itemization. In fact, he's exactly the same to where Baskin is right now, but still feel like Baskin probably has a little bit left that he hasn't back to spend at this point. Net worth, he's up about 300-400, so he's going to be getting to that second stage pretty soon of that Soul Reaver. But Baskin has just gotten this level advantage. He's up about a level and a half.
That's the big thing, and Crimson caught out into the middle of it, has both of his relics available, but opting not to use them just yet. Aegis will get rid of the damage from the Mystic Rush, but Mask will still find it into the back. Gamma and Aqua teaming up. They will be able to trade it out and get Mask up into the World Serpent they go just to keep Baskin zoned out of the fight and turning their tables onto Meerkat. Haddix is here, but it's not going to be enough as Aqua picks up the double kill onto Meerkat. Blugin now the one in danger. He's stuck in the middle of both of the tanks, and Baskin able to turn around and grab that, and he might be able to get Aqua up into the sky. He goes, the fire shards do a little bit. The Aegis avoids the damage from the spit, and Baskin turns it around with one last basic. 4 for 2 trade, and it might be another as they're still looking for Gamma under this tower.
Nice beads by Haddix. Keeps himself in place and makes sure that he can clean up Gamma. That's the deicide for Baskin and the boys. They only lose 2 members. Not the greatest or cleanest initiation. I think that Geno was probably a little bit late on that Ohm. His Dharmic Pillars kind of found no man's land in the midst of that. It forces Mass to overcommit a little bit. But Baskin is just putting out a ton of player damage right now. He's at 15k at 17 minutes, dealing nearly 1,000 damage a minute up until this point, which is expected from Nuwa to some degree. I mean, every time you press 4, you're stacking player damage, whether you're trying to kill that particular person or not. But you see the power of the Nuwa against the Yorm after Aqua dunks down with that final charge of the World Serpent. You just have to sit there and take the damage from the Nuwa because there's not a whole lot you can do to get away from it.
I mean, you said it perfectly at the start of the game, is Nuwa against Jormungandr is a field day for Nuwa because of how large this this Jormungandr is. I mean, he is one of the biggest gods in the game as far as how wide his hitbox goes. It just sets up for such easy basic attack confirmation, gets those roots real easily. Lots of area for the clay soldiers to cover to try and get some damage off as well. Using those fire shards for vision more than anything that time around, seeing where everybody's at, and shows everybody's on that left side of the map. And starting up this Fury is Baskin and the boys. Gamma is here, but he's tossing Gamma around. Gamma's just not having a fun time here as the Dharmic Pillars drop down. He's forced into the waters just to get out.
Andy looking for the steal, but just can't quite find it. Haddix tracks him down and sends him on the run.
It's the Kingslayer expended as well. He's just trying to get out and will have that Sandstorm teleport to get out. Now, Haddix does still have that Lawbringer, could have chased, but Disciplined Mindset will not continue forth as the other 4 players now onto the map push to this left-hand side, just leaving old Geno on the top side to figure out where in the heck Crimson went. Well, Crimson's taking jungle camps right now, so while he's distracted over there, let's just take a tier 2 tower and put ourselves up another 1,500 gold.
Geno's job is just to get this wave in mid so that you get the Oni wave a little bit closer to this tier 1 tower, but it seems like B&B want to back and spend this gold and play this a little bit slower and not necessarily shove with the Oni wave at the perfect timing, because Meerkat went back to base and finished off that Aussie at this point. So it looks like those waves are taken care of, and it looks like Baskin has realized that he can stack a lot of player damage really fast if he just presses 4 every time it's up.
Oh, is that what Nuaz do? Is that they press 4? I think that's a mistake I've been making in my games. I unbound my 4 key because I'm like, oh, it doesn't do any damage. I mean, why would I ever need it?
J-Mac, only someone as talented as you could not do a whole lot of damage with New Wall. So it's a skill, you know. Be proud of that.
I'm putting that on my resume. Hopefully my employer sees that I'm able to get that kind of presence in a game as a new wall. Hopefully one day. Up onto the Mount of Archery, Blugin goes to find Baskin. They put him down to about half, but Blugin dashes in a little too aggressively and leaves Crimson alone into the back and falls himself. 2 quick kills for Baskin and the boys, and might be a third as Andy just cannot escape the wrath of Haddix on this tier. Gamma stuck inside the jungle. He'll now find the route where Haddix is taken, and Aqua all the way in the back on this World Serpent. He's not able to do anything so far.
So they got Baskin's Aegis. You got to give him credit for that, but otherwise that was a very, very ambitious engage by 2 backliners on Bloogy and the Woogys. That was the Hachiman and the Merlin, not usually who you want to get your fight started.
Especially Blugin on the Hachiman, using the ultimate's one thing, but the dash as well, that means you're not going to have either that ultimate for the next fight. I mean, he's going to have the relics when he comes back up, but right now, trying to start with this Fire Giant, Baskin, the boys, they had it down to about half. They went the reset. That's just because Aqua used that World Serpent, so they had to back away from it. Now they're right back onto it. A little low, but no one is in the area to stop them. And that'll be the objective going the way of Baskin and the boys. Meerkat getting a little dangerously low there. We're taking 1 too many hits.
Nothing like happened to Aegis, the PvE event on the Fire Giant there. Not exactly a feels great moment there for Baskin. And actually a pretty significant misplay here by Baskin. He actually ulted before Crimson and Blugin respawned. That's a lot of player damage he left on the table there, J-Mac. I mean, they were up in 5-6 seconds. I think if he waits that out, you're getting an extra 1,000 damage almost on your player damage. You got to be doing better than that.
I mean, that's just free real estate there, Ryan. I mean, it's literally free money, free damage, and he's just playing so impatiently right now. He's like, yeah, guys, look at all this cooldown reduction I have. I'm just going to throw it away super early. I mean, what's another 6 seconds? I'll have it up in 60 seconds again anyways.
Now that he's got that soul gem, it's going to be hitting even harder every time it's up. As soon as it's up, hey, Baskin
hold on, let's see.
Goes up. And look at that. He pads the numbers again.
3,000 damage he just put up with that.
Worth it. And look, he's forcing Crim to back. I mean, look at the space he's creating, you know? Like, this is the presence that Baskin brings to the table. And he's got a full CDR, so it's going to be up sooner rather than later.
I mean, this is peak Nuwa right here. If he doesn't have 50,000 damage by the time this game is over, I mean, was he really even playing Nuwa?
He's going to have to do a lot of damage to hit 50k with the pace of this game, for sure.
I mean, he just needs like 6 ults and a couple of more fights, and Gamma needs a couple of more protections to get away from Baskin as he drops him down real quick with the help of Geno. Aqua stuck in the back, and Haddix diving under the tower to push Blugin and Crimson back. But Haddix is looking real healthy right now on this tier, and Mask with the overhead kick will avoid the tower shot. Andy trying to make a wraparound on the back, but I'm not sure that you're going to be able to fight the full onslaught of 5 from Baskin and the boys. Now looking at this tier 2 tower, I'm not sure that Bloogy and the Woogys want to try and really defend this.
It's not possible with how low they are, and now they're about to be even lower. Again, 3 seconds on a respawn timer. Baskin's wasting 1 person worth of damage, but maybe this one's a little bit more worth it.
They're looking at the Phoenix as Meerkat is putting a ton of damage into it. Up in the World Serpent goes Aqua, but he's not going to be able to stick around into the midst very long. Mask will get that overhead kick. Now allow him to immune the damage out of it, but Gamma, just unfortunate for him, just has no way of getting in and disrupting this backline. These pillars out of Geno have just been his downfall every fight.
And when you have a push speeds alert on the other side and you still don't get the kill onto Mask, that feels pretty tough. I mean, you got to be capitalizing on mistakes like that, but Mask able to stay alive courtesy of that overhead kick and some good damage and peel from the rest of the squad. And now Baskin and the boys, they've already gotten 1 Phoenix down. Baskin's about to go back and get even more damage, and now his ults are going to be hitting even harder.
Well, he's got about 2,200 gold in hand. That'll be enough to sell Mage's Blessing. Not quite enough for a Rod of Tahuti if that's what he wants to go with, but can easily pick up a 6th item entirely, and it will be an Obsidian Shard. And let's see how much damage he gets off of this one. Well, we're going to see the damage, but I'm assuming at least probably 3,500 off of that one, considering his last ones were hitting for over 3,000. 39,000 player damage on him now. You said 50k is a stretch. I don't know. I think it's very real at this point.
Yeah, I mean, what? 2 more ults if he can get those off. He did lose 10% CDR by selling that Mage's Blessing. Now he's only at 30%. So the ults are hitting harder, but less frequently. And I don't know if Baskin's really super happy with that trade.
Nah, that's not worth it. That's a horrible trade out there. You just can't have it. By the way, 644 magic power on this new one. Means those ultimates, like you said, hitting much harder, not as frequent, but even still in the midst of the team fights, just 1 clay minion explosion with that shiny metal. If he can get 2 or 3 of those minions to explode, that's going to be dealing at least 1,000 plus to whoever that hits, even if it's a tank at this point. With the amount of percent pin and flat pin he's built up, I mean, he's just shredding through everyone.
And now at this point, you really don't have a whole lot of answers to Nuwa. This is the point where she does become a real problem, because that ultimate's landing, whether or not you want it to, and you either have to blow a relic like Aegis or Shell in order to keep your backline safe, or you've got to take her out before she can get into the sky. But between the minions that are going to body block auto attacks and a lot of different abilities, it's pretty difficult to do.
Gamma, the front line for it, is getting caught again, but he has to back on out. Pluck. It's going to be good to throw Geno into the back, but I'm not sure that's what you want to throw there as the Dharmic Pillars are dropped through. Haddix over the wall, and Aqua stuck in the cage. He's not going to even have a chance to get into that World Serpent ultimate, and immediately dropped down and sent to the fountain for 55 seconds is this solo laner, and that's just going to open the doors for the Fire Giant for Baskin and the boys. Still not enhanced. We're not quite at that 30-minute mark just yet. They're more than willing to take that, and here's another big bit of damage here. 40,000 up to 43,000, so, I mean, he's getting close to that point there, Ryan.
J-Mac, this is just uncharacteristic of Baskin, though. He's making mistakes left and right. They're about to get Fire Giant. He doesn't wait for the Fire Giant damage buff to go onto him before using the ultimate. I mean, it's attention to detail that you've got to have at this level, and especially from Baskin, man, it's just disappointing.
He's just slipping. This isn't the same Baskin I knew, 2-3 years ago. That Baskin would have never made this mistake. He also wouldn't have just walked away from the red buff. I mean, Baskin, that's actual free real estate. I don't know why you're just leaving that buff sitting on the ground.
That was dropped by Andy, I think. I think that they invaded that, so it didn't have a chance, and that's actually very smart by Andy, because imagine how hard those ults would be hitting if Baskin had red. That's what you've got to be doing. Good objective identification here by andinster, understanding what's really important in this one, and at least to Baskin, that's the damage numbers.
And they can't hit us harder if they don't have the free buff that lets them hit harder, he says. Well, it doesn't quite matter for them, as this Emperor's Armor plus Shogun's Kasari combo out of Geno is putting work onto this Phoenix. There's no response out of Bloogy and the Woogys to even try and stop this one from going down. Left side bird falls, mid one at a very weakened state. Up into the sky goes Baskin and puts out another 3,000 damage for free onto that one. Now getting dangerously close to that 50k. Mid bird in that weakened state will fall very quickly. I love this combo of items picked up by Geno. It's going to make the Phoenix hit less, and it's going to make his team hit the Phoenix more times.
And he hasn't even used that upgraded Frenzy that he has at this point either, so the all-in for the Titan is going to be a pretty easy one if they want to use those tools.
And look at Haddix. He's in their he's in their base. He's just sitting under their other Phoenix saying, I dare someone to step forward. I dare anyone to approach me at this point. He's sitting at the mid lane, waiting for somebody to step forward. It's going to be the Pillar's Drop, Crimson at about half health, and who else but Haddix to be into the backline to punish him out and drop him down. A solo out of Haddix. He's going to leave it in a 4v5. There's that upgrade of Frenzy out of Geno. The blink into the back goes Mass as he drops down Gamma. Trying to make something for nothing is Andy as he gets taken out immediately. Aqua on that World Serpent is just on full retreat. But it's 5 strong out of Baskin and the boys as the Titan is exposed. All Phoenix is down. Only Aqua and Blugin left to defend. But it's not even that much as Aqua gets dropped by Baskin. Blugin is being pushed out by Haddix and the Titan falls. Baskin and the boys 3-0. Bloogy and the Woogys.
51,000 player damage in
it.
29 minutes for Baskin. And yeah, a lot of that's inflated by pressing 4 every single time. But the dive just was not effective onto this Nuwa. Felt like Geno was just really, really performing at a very high level today. That last team fight underneath the right Phoenix, he drops the Dark Pillars onto Crimson, does a third of his health right away. Haddix comes in, cleans him up. Crim saves his relics for next phase, I guess. And from there on, it's a very, very easy fight for Baskin and the boys.
I mean, that last fight was just a showcase of what happens when you don't have any advantage in any of your lanes. We're going to throw it over to the Dez to see if they've got any final thoughts here on that matchup from Baskin and Bloogy and the Woogys.
Final thoughts are that Baskin is still very good at the game of Smite, despite uncharacteristic lack of FG pickup pre-ulting. He was able to reach 51,000 damage by the end of this one, and I'm hoping Wormy will be able to tell me exactly how we got there. I mean, this is one that kind of seemed like a non-starter for Bloogy and the Woogys. They got Baskin ahead early, and that was just kind of all she wrote.
Indeed. I mean, we saw 2 games between this matchup, and both times there just didn't seem to be any pressure on top of Baskin. He was able to do basically whatever he wanted, and Geno was always there to protect his carry. He was doing such a great job at maintaining and making sure that his carries were safe, and clearly you can see it. I mean, Baskin died 1 time in total during this set, but I think that, to be honest, it just was an amazing performance all around from Baskin and the boys. They definitely deserve this win.
Yeah, easy to kind of give the shout to Baskin sort of amongst all that was happening there. You know, I think it's another example of where it was the long lane kind of got some pressure against Baskin and the boys. It wasn't quite as well placed while the rest of the map was just going in Baskin and the boys' favor. And I agree with the point that you made around Geno as well. I think this Ganesh looked great in both of the games that we saw it, played exactly how Geno was hoping it would, opened up the doors for a lot of the other players on Baskin and the boys, even outside of Baskin, to roll through and find some success. I mean, it's easy to, or maybe difficult, to forget how Haddix did in this game. He was soloing Crimson by the end of this one. It seems like one of those games, Wormy, where anywhere you looked, there was somebody on Baskin and the boys waiting to do well, even outside of just Baskin.
I love the storyline in this game, too, because even though this is only a 2-game set, in Game 1, 3 of the picks on Baskin and the boys belonged to Bloogy and the Woogys, and they said, oh, that's your draft. Well, we'll do it better.
Yes, and Baskin and the boys did it better by a small order of magnitude here. And that means Baskin and the boys take the championship for Phase 1 of the SEC over here in NA. And this is exactly how they got there. I still think, I mean, you look back to day number 1, Hype Unit 2-0 over Bloogy and the Woogys. You got to give props to those Hype Unit guys. And then, unfortunately, fall 0-2 back-to-back to Baskin and the boys. And then Bloogy and the Woogys to bring us to the finals here, and this was the final Sunday bracket we had for you. Belt Slap 3-1 over Snake Pit over in Europe. Baskin and the boys 3-0 over Bloogy and the Woogys here in NA. Wormy, I mean, you got Belt Slap, you got Baskin and the boys standing on top after one phase here in the SCC. Any surprises with those two teams kind of lifting the virtual trophy at the end of the day?
I think that both these teams had a ton of experience, and the synergy that we've been seeing between these teams has been insane. I think their drafting was pretty much on point throughout the whole thing, and I'm really excited to see them as we enter into Phase 2.
Did you, on the flip side of the coin, the second place team, we were able to talk about the Snake Pit a little bit and how Belt Slap, obviously, far and away the best team over in Europe here in the SCC, unbeaten except for one game to the Snake Pit here today. Now looking at Bloogy and the Woogys, the team that was able to beat this Baskin and the boys team earlier in the SCC. Despite the 0-3 here in the finals, do you think that this is a team that in the next phase, pending qualification, will again maybe be able to take some games off of Baskin and the boys in the future?
Absolutely. I think it's a possibility for sure, but it depends what kind of Bloogy and the Woogys we see. I mean, yesterday, they absolutely went nuts on that hype unit team that they lost to before, and unfortunately we didn't see that form of Bloogy and the Woogys today, but pending their success in the league, I think that they can start to bring it back, and with a couple of meta changes here and there, it might work out for them. So depending on what we see coming up, I think that they have a chance.
Well, remember, I mean, over in NA, it was very close-knit. I mean, Bloogy and the Woogys technically the first seed, Baskin and the boys right behind them, and then locked and goated. It was 4-1, 4-1, 3-2 standings-wise after Phase 1 in the SCC. Big congrats, though. Belt Slap and Baskin and the boys at the end of the SCC Phase 1 tournament stand on top in EU and NA, respectively. That's only half the day, though. We've got the SPL coming up right after this.
Yeah.